Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana, and we're here today with special guest Ava Dellaira, who's here to share with us her new novel, Exposure. So Ava Dellaira is the author of the highly acclaimed young adult novels In Search of Us and Love Letters to the Dead, which was named Best Book of the Year by Apple, Google, BuzzFeed, the New York Public Library, and the Chicago Public Library. So welcome to the show, Ava Dellaira.
Thank you, Marianne. I'm so happy to be here.
What an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. So what even inspired you to write this?
That's a great question. This is a big, rather sprawling book with a lot of themes in it. So I took inspiration from many different places, events that were happening in my own life, the loss of my mother, and then the loss of my father after I began writing this book. My experience as a new mother, I started this when I was pregnant with my first child, my daughter, who's now 6. So there's definitely a lot of those early days of motherhood in the book. My experiences of the intensity of female friendship, especially when you're young. My experiences of being in Hollywood, trying to make it as a writer, the intensity of the desire to sort of break through and become somebody. And one of the big, sources of inspiration was also the cultural moment. I got the idea for this book in 2016, when I think some of the divisions in our culture were becoming visible in different ways. And I wanted to create a story that attempted to humanize opposing perspectives, to look at somebody on, quote unquote, the other side of the battle line, and or the person behind the headline, and make them into a real person. So it was sort of an attempt to create more space for empathy, I think.
Well, you do touch on quite a few themes, and I am so sorry for your loss. It's never easy losing a parent, let alone two.
Thank you.
And I know that your book, it's set in both Los Angeles and Chicago. So how do these settings influence the story and the characters?
Yeah, well, the Chicago piece of the book is a smaller piece, but still an essential piece. It's set in the neighborhood of Hyde Park around the University of Chicago. One of the characters is a freshman there, which is where I went to college. And then the Los Angeles piece of the book is where most of the story takes place. And, I find I was actually born in LA. I grew up in Albuquerque, and then I came back here right after the death of my mother. And I find this city to be such a rich setting because there are so many facets of it. There are so many parts of it, views of it. And it is a place, I think, that really is almost like a holding space for people's dreams. It's a place that seems as if, when you first arrive here, there's almost the illusion that you might just be able to walk through a revolving door and come out as someone else on the other side. You might be able to, make it overnight. When I first came, I had this really old beat up car, and when you'd park it in a nice parking lot somewhere or even at the mall, you'd get like advertisements tucked into your windshield for like new fancy car places that you could go to, because they're thinking like, oh, maybe this person just got rich overnight and is going to go trade in their old car. It's like has that sort of like mentality of you might just become somebody else in an instant. And that's an interesting part of the mythology of the city, I think. At the same time, my husband grew up here, and getting to know him and getting to know the city through his point of view gave me also a much different perspective on it.
Yeah, it's a whole different animal for sure.
Yeah.
So, why don't you share a little bit about exposure with us? What is the story about?
So the book begins in 2003 with Noah, a Black high school senior, and Juliet, a white college freshman. They are two lonely souls who meet and form a connection, and then after a night of drinking, they go home together. We leave off there and move both backwards and forwards in time, getting to know them and those closest to them, and exploring the themes that shape their lives, some of the things that I just touched on, like the intensity of young female friendship and the tension between artistic ambition and romantic partnership, the effects of race and class and loss and grief. It is 12 years later when Noah's done the impossible and broken through in Hollywood. His first film has been a festival darling and is about to be released. And he and his wife, Jessie, whom he's been with for years, have just had their first child. Then, in the early days of his newborn daughter's life, a news story breaks, and the story begins to be adjudicated in the court of public opinion. The book is told in multiple perspectives, Noah's and Juliet's, as well as Annie's and Jessie's. At its heart, I think it's really about the possibility of empathizing with opposing points of view and of holding space for more than one truth at the same time.
Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Ava Dellaira in regards to her new novel, Exposure. You've been listening to Moments with Mary Ann. We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Are you an author, speaker, or expert who is looking for more publicity? Visit radioguestlist.com and sign up for free interview requests from shows looking for guests. Radio Guest List is the #1 free booking resource for radio, podcasts, and TV talk shows who are looking for experts like you right now. Visit radioguestlist.com and sign up today to get the visibility you deserve.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special. When you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
It's one thing to become attached to your perfect home, but what do you do when that home becomes attached to you? A family in dire need of a fresh start, a mysterious house tied to the past. Buried deep within the foundation of the old Far Hill Manor lies a centuries-old secret. Dark forces or something stronger just waiting to be discovered. Caretaker, a supernatural thriller by breakout authors R.J. Halpert.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Welcome back to Moments with Mary Ann. We're here today with special guest, Ava Dellaira, who's here sharing with us her new novel, Exposure. Before we left for break, we were talking about allowing for different viewpoints, and one of the things I really appreciate about your book, it does dive into this perspective of there's not always a victor or villain. It could be somewhere in between.
Exactly. Being able to live in those gray areas is not always easy, but I do think it's essential because so much of life is like that, like you said.
What was the most challenging part of writing Exposure, and how did you overcome that?
Oh, good question. Really hard book to write. It was the scariest and most challenging thing that I've ever written. It touched on a lot of my own past experiences, past traumas, and working through those as I was writing the book was challenging. It is, as you can probably hear in the description, somewhat provocative, and I didn't write it in order to be provocative. Actually, I wrote it in order to create more space for empathy, but that's part of it too. And so it was it was scary to me for that reason, but I did a lot of self-talk as I was writing. I would, go hiking near my house or take walks and just remind myself about why I was telling this story, what was really at the heart of it, which is this desire to create more space for empathy, to be willing to hear the other side of a story, to humanize the people behind the headlines and the hot takes online. And that was a useful way, I think, for me to stay with it. Even though it was really hard in moments, and I wrote it during, my own early phases of motherhood. I had both of my children during the time I was writing this book, so it would have been really easy just not to do it. But something about the story just wouldn't let me go. It felt like I had to, I guess.
Where can our readers and listeners learn more about Exposure and be part of your community?
Well, the book is published through Zibby Books, which is in and of itself, Zibby has created an incredible community of readers. So you can definitely find more information about me and about the book on their website. You can also find more information about me on my website, which is just my name, avadellaira.com. I'm on Instagram as well.
Well, Ava, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Marianne. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Ava. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new novel, Exposure. Exposure is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and everywhere books are sold, and you can also purchase this book directly from the publisher, Zibby Books. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.